Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Tessman from stampyourartout.com. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Andover, Minnesota in the US, and today I'm bringing you a pre-recorded online paper crafting class where I'll share with you the steps and helpful tips for these two different cards, featuring a couple new creative ways to use the layering leaves stamp set and the coordinating bow punch. I wasn't able to be live with you today because I took off for Houston yesterday to be at Stampin' Up's annual convention this week, but I still wanted to share at my usual time. This set is extra special for me because I came up with the idea of it and had a hand in designing the images for it when I reached my million in sales milestone. And after creating each of these two cards, I couldn't decide which one I should share in video format because I think they're both so fun and unique. So I'm sharing both of them with you today. I hope you enjoy what I share, and if you do, please click the thumbs up, share with your friends, and make sure that you're subscribed to my channel so that you can see more creative ideas that I share each week using Stampin' Up's products. We'll start with the bunny card. It's a bit easier to make, but it does involve a lot more tools. We'll be using the Excellent Egg dies, this large one here, and a couple circles, the smallest two, from the Reach for the Stars dies. And then the only stamp image that we're using from Excellent Eggs is the little tiny sentiment stamp that says, "There's no bunny like you." The die cutting can be done on either the large Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine or the small. You're going to sandwich your dies, crank the handle and the rollers in the middle, put pressure on those dies against the paper, and cut out those shapes. So we now have our bunny body, bunny head, and the egg, the background little egg that they're going to stay on for kind of a little, little frame. A lot of the imagery for this card actually comes from the Layering Leaves stamp set. We're going to cut a strip that is 1 1/4 inches in height. This is our pumpkin pie cardstock. I'm going to take my stamp from the Layering Leaves and my pumpkin pie ink, and I'm using the stamp image that kind of has a swirl going in the middle, down the middle of each leaf. And I'll stamp that only once for one card, but if you're going to do multiple cards, you'll want to stamp quite a few, and you can get, I don't know, about 5 on a strip that is about 11 inches long. You can possibly even get 4 if you kind of squish them tight on a piece that's 8.5 inches long. After stamping, you'll open up your punch and you'll line up your image and this is a great paper saving technique because with that size strip, the 1 1/4 inches in height, you don't have to worry about stamping this piece. Now we are going to punch that onto a piece of garden green because we'll need that image 3 times for the carrots. And here's an example of, if you don't use a strip, how punching into a scrap where you only needed this piece is kind of wasteful because it punches out that one as well. We will only need this piece. We're going to grab that. As you can see, we also need a couple of the leaf clusters stamped with garden green ink and punched. So we have those ready. And we need a length of the variegated balmy blue and white ribbon. 18 inches will be great. We also need cardstock layers, and so we're going to cut our white, balmy blue, and crumb cake, these 3 colors here, in just a second. Keep the pumpkin pie ink and this sentiment set aside because you will be using that later on towards the end of the card. If you're new to Stampin' Up! Products, I do have this mat underneath. I actually own a couple of them. Actually more than that, but I own a couple. One I keep for piercing on and the other one I do not pierce on. These Stampin' Pierce mats are great for not only, when you want to poke holes, but when you want to stamp with your clear or photopolymer stamps. The difference between the two different stamps, as you can see, this has rubber, this has clear rubber, but this has a little bit of foam in between. and that cushion helps to even out the image when you stamp it down. So putting that foam underneath your cardstock gives you a better image overall. We're going to start next with cutting our card layers and card base. This type of card is opening in this direction. Oops, I got to finish the inside. It opens in this direction, but you could have it open the other way if you want to. We're going to open it in the same way. So we're going to cut our cardstock in half at 5.5 inches, and then rotate it and score it at 4.25 inches. That's halfway from the 8.5 mark. So we have the 8.5 by 11 cut in half and folded into our card base, which now measures 4.25 inches by 5.5. We want some layers. We're going to cut our balmy blue next, and instead of going to the 5.5 inch mark, I'm just going to double check because I think I want to make sure I measured it right. Yes, okay. We're going to go to the 5 3/8 inch mark. So here's 5.5, here's 5 3/8 inches. On the Stampin' Up! Trimmer, it's 2 little marks back, and we will cut. And we are going to use a half of this sheet because we're going to put one on the inside too. So we're going to now cut, instead of at 4.25, we're going to go back 2 little marks and we'll go to the 4.1/8 inch mark. And we'll do the same thing with this piece. So one layer will go on the inside, one layer will go on the outside. And then with our basic white, we'll go just a little bit smaller. So instead of 5.5, we're going to go 4 marks in. 1, 2, 3, 4. That brings us to 5.25 inches. And then again in this direction, instead of 4.25, we'll go 4 marks back. That brings us right to the 4 inch mark. So these layers are 4 by 5.25. And they'll all stack nicely onto each other and give a nice framed look. We're going to do a little bit of blending brush ink addition, where we put on a little light haze of color. We're going to put that on underneath where the bunny is going to sit so that you can see a little bit of blue on there, and then underneath the egg is also a highlighter, a haze of that same blue ink. So we need to do that to both of these 2 white layers here, and to do that we'll use our blending brush and our balmy blue ink pad. I've got some scrap paper, or grid paper is what we call it, underneath. I'm taking my blending brush and I'm holding on to the top part and the handle so it's nice and stable, and I'm just swirling in a circular motion to pick up the ink. And if you want to, you can take and check it on your grid paper to make sure that it's, not too dark. If it's too dark, you can always rub it on your grid paper until it's light enough. Now the bunny is going to go in the middle, so that's where I'm going to start. And I'm just going to go around in a circular motion on my cardstock, and you're going to see a deeper coloring in the middle, and if it bothers you, it is going to be covered up, but we're just going to keep on going in a circular motion, and that helps to eliminate the ink from the brush and add it to the egg. I'm going to add just a little bit more because in person here I can tell that it needs to be a little bit deeper in color. And I'm being careful not to hit the edges of the die cut piece because that will cause a dark colored edge. When you hit the edges with a sponge or a blending brush or a dauber, it tends to grab onto a lot of ink right where the cardstock ends or starts. Let's do the same thing with this layer. This is going to be on the front of the card, remember, and it's going to be, the egg is going to be sitting here. So this is where we want the color to be sitting. And I'm checking to make sure that this white is different than the white underneath. When you put your egg on top, you can see that there's definitely a difference. You can see some of that blue haze coming out. I'm going to deepen it just a little bit more. Also, I wanted to note that I turn my cardstock upside down just to make sure that my hand is still kind of running in a very even circle, because sometimes I'm heavier on one side than I am on the other with the pressure. We're going to add our ribbon next, and before we do that, I just want to tell you, don't worry about any messiness that's in the middle here, because again, that egg is going to cover it up. We're going to lay this layer down on top of our flat ribbon. The ribbon does have a more dominant side, so I made sure that that is facing outward. And I'm going to do right over the left. So the ribbon that's coming from my right side is going to go over the ribbon that's coming from my left side. I'm going to bend that ribbon in half, like that. And then I'm going to bend this ribbon the opposite way. Oopsie. So it's going up like that. And I'm going to cinch to get that, that knot started. I'm going to hold onto that area with my ring finger, and then I'm going to turn my cardstock this way. Now, if you are not able to hold onto the start of your knot with your finger, you can put adhesive on the back side of the ribbon, shift your ribbon to where it's going to be, and then start tying your knot there. The ribbon is going to go over to the left. Okay, now that I've twisted this off this way, this now becomes my left ribbon and this becomes my right. I'm going to do left over right. And I'm going to fold this top one in half. And as I pull it through, you're going to notice that I have the non-dominant side of the left ribbon showing. So what I need to do is give it a twist right before I tighten the knot. So I'm going to twist it and tighten. And now I have my little knot, which I can trim. I've got two different scissors. One I've marked with a ribbon so that I use that only with my fabric. And the other one I use with paper. And the one with paper does get dull over time, so you'll want to replace that every once in a while. Because I don't have my knot in the right place and I haven't put any adhesive on, I can take and bend this layer of cardstock and shift this over to where I want it to be. And it's going to go about 3/4 of an inch or an inch up from the base of the card. And now at this point, I'm going to stamp. I'll lay my egg where it's going to be, and we're going to stamp our sentiment, because once the egg is on there, it's going to be harder to stamp this. Let's use grid paper and make sure that our stamp, because it's not clear, is going to stamp nice and straight when we lay it down. Perfect. And I had to stop the camera to laugh a little bit. It's not perfectly straight on my layer, and that is because, you know, when you're filming, you're at an angle. I'm just going to say that as my excuse. Anyways, giggle, giggle. Okay, let's go ahead and start to add this layer onto a balmy blue. I'm going to use seal adhesive for that. You could use multi-purpose liquid glue. You just need a little bit of tape or glue in the four corners. We'll add that to one of our balmy blue layers, so it's a 1/16 of an inch border of blue all the way around. This will get added flat to the front. So again, glue or tape. And then you'll want to check your card base. Make sure that there's no gappage showing here. If there is, that should show on the back. We'll add this to the front with, again, a 1/16 of an inch all the way around. On the inside of our card, we'll add these layers in the same order. Now we'll add the egg, and we're going to add that with dimensionals. I'm going to add one at the bottom, then two somewhat up towards the top, and then one at the very top. And this should give us about 4 legs for that egg to stand on. Pull off the release paper, and we'll add that right here. So it's standing nice and tall and it looks straight. Perfect. The next thing that we'll add are the leaves, and for that I'm going to, because I know that I was going to have enough room to tuck these because I put my dimensionals in those certain spots, I'm just going to go ahead and add my adhesive to the back side. I'm using multi-purpose liquid glue, which I've transferred to a skinny precision tip bottle, and I'm going to add just a little bit of glue behind the base leaves and the stem where they're all connected. I'm going to lift the egg up a bit, tuck it underneath here, and hold the egg down on top of it. And that'll help press it to the white layer that's behind it. Now on this one, this leaf is not going to show, so we're going to trim that one off. Do the same thing, base leaf and the stem. That way you have something to hold on to too, right? And we're going to tuck this underneath here, like that. I've opened up my card so it will lie flat, and the next thing we're going to do is add our bunny and our carrots. So let's start creating them. I'm going to put the dimensional right on the back side of the largest circle, which is the bunny body, and that I'm placing right in the middle, about a 1/2 inch or 5/8 of an inch from the bottom, about there. The head is going to be added with either the multi-purpose liquid glue or with seal adhesive. Oh, before we do that though, we need to add the ears, because the ears are going to tuck right behind. So for the ears, we're going to trim off these top 3 leaves, and we're going to trim off the smallest of them. This is the bunny ear, little combo we've got here, okay? So to add that, we're just going to add a little bit of adhesive right on the stem area, being sure not to go into the leaf area. And we're going to add the head right on top and hold it a bit. So one ear is flopping off to the side, the other one is going more straight up and down. Super cute, right? We might as well add this whole thing with our multi-purpose liquid glue, and that's going to get tucked underneath. And that's the reason why we only put 1 dimensional on the bunny. That's going to get tucked right underneath here so that the head meets up with that dimensional. So cute. We need a tail on that bunny, and you can grab that from any one of these 3 leaves that are left. I'm going to grab this one, and when I cut it off, I'm going to round out that leaf on the base. But this time, instead of gluing it down, I want a slight shadow, not a huge one, but a slight shadow. Do you see that on this card here? That I did with the help of a glue dot, because a glue dot has a little bit of a lift to it. So we'll just take and add a glue dot right to the back side here where the tail is going to be, and stick that tail down onto our bunny. Little bunny butt, so cute. For the carrots, you're going to do a little bit of a roundness and trim. So you're separating these larger leaves, which are now carrots, from the stem part. And we can do, let's do another one too. Let's just do this top one, which I think is the 4th largest. For the greens that come off the carrots, you're going to trim off about 1/4 of an inch from all of these bud punched pieces. You're going to add glue right to the base of the stem, and you're going to add your carrot right on top. Allow that to dry. We'll do that with the others. Let's go ahead and complete that card now by cutting the stem part of our carrots. And I'm just cutting at an angle. I'm not cutting straight across. I'm cutting either this way or the other way just to make an angle cut. And then you have the fun little greenery coming off. And now to add them, we'll add a little bit of glue behind. It takes a bit of fine motor skills, but you could also use the tweezers to help you out, or glue one at a time. You didn't have to do both of them at the same time like I did. But there is the front of the card. There is the inside, because I added, I finished my sample one too. I added that extra carrot on the inside. So stinking cute, right? Now, because of the sentiment I chose, there's no bunny like you. You didn't really need to, use this card for Easter, right? Of course, you could stamp on Hello Spring. You could stack and stamp on Happy Easter to make room. So the happy would go up here, the Easter would go down here using masking techniques. This could go on the inside or it can go on the front. So you could make your card a card to be given other than for Easter, or you could even use one of these sentiments from the Layering Leaves stamp set. But there is the bunny card, turning the leaves, the images into bunnies and carrots. Now I want to show you how to make the flower on the other card. So this card is a little bit more elaborate to make. It's an easel card, but it uses a few less supplies. And there's no die cutting involved, but we do need to fussy cut. So we're going to stamp this tree layer, and then we're going, it's a slice, I guess, tree slice, and then we're going to cut around it with our scissors. For our basic white, our layers are 3 3/4 inches by 5. I'm going to do 2 of those, and one we're actually going to trim down a little bit. We also have a scrap that is large enough to accommodate the tree slice. And that is 3.5 by 3.5, although we probably could go a little bit smaller. And then we have a strip that is 1.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And I probably will need a little bit more of this. Also, we have a half sheet of Parakeet Party, which we're going to put score lines into. And then we have Early Espresso, which is slightly larger than, I got to trim those. Hang on. We're going to trim those and score this one right now. So this one will be slightly larger than the white, which is 5 inches. So this is going to be 5 1/8. Sorry about that. Oopsie. So 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. And that is the perfect size to make a layer for that piece. And we'll do the other one the same way. So 5 1/8 by 3 7/8 for that one. For the score lines, since we have the trimmer out, we're going to need to score this in half at 5.5 inches. And then halfway between 0 and 5.5 is 2 3/4. So we're going to go to the 2 3/4 inch mark and put another score line there, only on one end, not the other. And that will create our easel. Let's cut just a little bit more white while we have it out here. 1 1/4 inch strip. There we go. And then let's grab our bone folder. Make sure that this is folded in half. Edges are lined up on the sides. Do the same thing when you crease here. Check those edges for alignment. And then because it's an easel card, we're going to go the opposite way with both of our folds. It's going to allow the easel better movement, and then we'll come back again and we'll crease this way. It just makes more of a hinge. It breaks the fibers of the cardstock to create an easier hinge for that card to go up and down. We'll set that aside for now, along with our fun sample, and we're going to bring in pieces to stamp. I have all the stamps mounted for the Layering Leaves. I've got my 2 different types of leaf images. I've got the So Happy to Celebrate You sentiment, and then I have this one here, which I personally have trimmed into 3 pieces on my stamp set. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. You can make your speckles go however you want, but that's what I chose to do. And then I need a larger block. This is our E-size block, so A, B, C, D, and this is E, and we're going to need to mount our tree slice, or I looked it up, it's called a cookie. I like tree slice better. Okay, now we're going to stamp our crumb cake ink with our tree slice with the crumb cake ink, and I'm just going to grab some scrap paper here so that our scrap paper that's underneath all of this doesn't get color all over it. It's kind of distracting. So we'll use this one here, and we're going to stamp off onto it, onto the grid paper, and that removes some of the color and lightens the image a bit. And then we're going to use a sponge dauber, and we're going to ink up the sides of our tree slice. We're going to make the cookie have darker edges all the way around by adding more crumb cake. And I'm doing it with the dauber because the dauber is a sponge, and it kind of gives a It doesn't give a harsh addition of color. It gives a soft, gradual flow into the lighter color that's already there. We're going to exhale onto the stamp to moisten the ink, and then we stamp it down firm. And there we have our cookie. And we're just going to fleck that little thing off there. There we go. Okay, so there's that. Darker edges, lighter middle. For these pieces, I'm going to bring out the Stampin' Pierce mat again. And we have two colors that we'll be using, three colors actually, and a blending pen. So we're going to use the blending pen. This is going to be saved for later. Hang on. Don't look at that yet. And then we also need Sweet Sorbet, Granny Apple Green, and our Parakeet Party for our leaf stamping. We will, let's start with the Granny Apple Green and Parakeet Party. Oh, and there's one other stamp to mount on this, so let me grab that. There's a fill-in image. So this one here can fill in this one and this one to give it a more, well, a colored-in look, right? So that's going to be used with the Parakeet Party, and the outline is going to be done with the Granny Apple Green. And I want to make sure that this stamp is nice and relaxed so it stays in the right shape. Inking it up, and we're going to stamp three, yes. 3 of these. With the Parakeet Party on the inside. And then we want the non-veined leaf, the one with the swirl going down the middle. So we're going to use this one now, which looks a little bit more floral to me. And we're inking that up with Sweet Sorbet, which is another color that is leaving us. See, I knew I needed just a little bit more. We're going to stamp that twice. And we're not going to fill that one in with an ink pad. Instead, we're going to take the blender pen. We have so many things titled blend right now. Okay, and we're going to grab the color from the outside edges. So this is a water-based type of pen that works with water-based inks, like our classic inks. And so what I'm doing is I'm just re-wetting that ink that was on the paper by pulling that color up and out into the middle. And I'm leaving the ends, the outside ends, a little bit white, kind of white tips, but you could color the whole thing if you'd prefer. One more thing that you could do, I'm just going to run that till it's clear. One more thing you could do is add Wink of Stella, or even color in. Instead of using the blender pen, you could use Wink of Stella to pull that color out and make it a more sparkly kind of fill in on the inside. Currently, right now, we have no Wink of Stella available, and so I did not want to tempt you with that, but it does give a very pretty look if you have that. Next, we are going to save these. These are going to be stamped with our Sweet Sorbet and with our Crumb Cake and with our Early Espresso once we start working on the assembly of the cards. So we'll set those aside, and now we're going to fussy cut and punch. I'm cutting about 1/16 of an inch or maybe less away from the design, and as I cut I am maneuvering the paper more so than the scissors. Now we're going to trim these down, and each of these leaves are going to separate from the stem. And you can leave a little bit of stem on them. It sometimes will help for the formation of the flower to have something to grab onto, but you don't want to have too much. This one is going to be cut into 2 different pieces right here. So we're going to separate that like that. This one will also get cut down. It'll be in the inside of the card, so we'll set that aside, and that one will stay whole. Now let's take our front layer of our card, and we're going to situate where this little guy is going to sit, and we're going to put him about there, centered from side to side, and about the same distance from the base. This will tell us how far we can stamp our sentiment. And for our sentiment, we're going to mask. So I recommend using tape, washi tape, masking tape, Scotch tape, Post-it notes, sticky tape, post-it tape. That way when you ink up this portion of the stamp, you don't accidentally get ink where you don't want it. So now we can remove that, set that off to the side carefully. The U is not inked up, just the So Happy to Celebrate, and that is going to get stamped down, making sure the words are straight. I'm looking at the words and not the edges of the block. And there we have that. This is where the marker comes in. We're going to put 3 little dots, an ellipsis right there. And then the inside layer is going to get the rest of the phrase. We will clean this off though in the meantime and come back to it later. Now what we want to do is do a little bit of ground imagery around here. So let me clean up my mess. Okay, we're going to be using 2 different colors, the crumb cake and the early espresso. Let's just open the crumb cake to begin with though. And we're going to pounce our dauber again up and down in that color. And we're going to create a ground coverage so that this thing, when it's up on dimensionals, not only has the shadow, but it has a deeper coloring behind it, sort of like what we did with the bunny card with the blending brush, but we're going to do this with a dauber and it's going to look more like dirt. So we're going to come in and we're just going to do kind of a pouncing action. And you can get as dark with that as you want to. I don't recommend doing a swirling motion with this though, because it'll look too smooth and it won't look dirty enough. We're going to do that same thing right through the middle here of our other white layer. Now, before we add this to the top, we're going to add some little speckles, and the speckles are going to be done in both crumb cake and in early espresso. I'm going to put a dimensional underneath where the little separation of the log is coming into play. So I'll put one there and one there, right on those 2 ends. I think I'm going to put one, I'm feeling my other card here. You know what, I'm going to move this one over. I'm going to put this one more off to this side and kind of create a triangular base here, and this one off to this side. Now they're both still towards the top because I want to tuck these leaves under here and I don't want them to kind of interfere with the adhesive. So think ahead, figure out where your adhesive is going to go. All right, so this can get added now to the front, making sure it's centered. And now at this point, I'm going to add a few of my leaves. So I've got this branch, this one, and I'm leaving one for the inside, and this one. And for this one here, it's going to get tucked under the tree circle or the cookie. If you wanted it flat to the surface of your layer here, then you would want to put the glue on the other side. But I'm going to have it kind of up. So we'll press down. It's being glued to the tree trunk slice. And now it's lifted up a bit. Do you see that? Okay. The next one is this one here, and we're going to put it behind the big leaf here on this side, and the lower half of the stem, that's where the glue is going to go. And that is going to get set down here in that spot. And this one is going to get set down here. So we're going to grab and put glue on the lower half of the stem and these 2 leaves, which would be in contact with the tree slice. And that'll get set down here, and the 2 stems are connecting. So that would be the distance that I'd recommend you have them apart from each other. Now because we have dimensionals here, here, and here, we can put one right here, and even though it will create even a higher lift when the card is open, when we mail it, that dimensional will flatten against the layer underneath, and the flower will not be as high as it looks when the card is open. So we're putting a dimensional there, and we're going to start building our flower. So we'll just take and add these petals. And I'm attaching all 6 of them right to the dimensional. So I'm leaving space for all 6. Now, for the next set of petals, we want to put a glue dot on the top. So we're going to grab that. And keeping that glue dot as wide and flat as possible, but still not too wide, because we're going to cover up that middle portion to put the center of the flower on. We now have adhesive. It's just a little bit, but we have adhesive going around. Plus we have any exposed dimensional adhesive still there. So share the glue dot. And you'll see that I didn't use all the big ones on the bottom and all the small ones on the top. You can, but you don't need to do that. I'm going to grab Glossy Dot Assortment here and use the yellow one and put that right in the middle to go over the glue dot and protect any stickiness that might be around there, and to give a center to our flower. And that's how you create a flower from the leaves. Very fun. It's a little more detailed, right? I said this card would be a little bit more elaborate to make, but it's well worth it, and oh so cute. I've done lots of creative things with this stamp set. You can find the ideas by going to my website at stampyourartout.com, and in the search bar when you're on the blog, put in layering leaves, and it will bring you to all of the posts that I've done sharing cards with this. I've turned these into candle flames. I've used them to create mistletoe, fall leaves, winter leaves, that kind of thing, you know, just different seasons. There's so much you can do with this image. I've even turned, gosh, this one here into coffee beans. All right, let's grab our card base. We're going to add this to the front of our card using seal or glue or tear and tape, and we're going to put adhesive along the bottom, only along the bottom of this piece, and then here on this layer we're going to put it right underneath the score line. That is the trick for creating an easel card, where you don't have to guess where to put it here. You just put it here, and together they team up and they create that front layer so that it's only adhered to the lower half. Okay? Just be careful not to go beyond on the green layer when you're adding the adhesive to the green layer. You don't want to go too far to the edges. So there is the easel portion. Now on the inside, we want to add another layer, and that layer is even more, well, it's not even more detailed, but it's almost as detailed. So we're going to add these together, and you can put adhesive going right through the whole length of the sides. We'll connect the two pieces, and then we're going to grab our trimmer, and we're going to cut them wherever we want to. I'm going to cut right about here through the middle of that image, which is bringing us to about the 2 3/8 inch, 2 5/8 inch mark here. And then I'm going to trim one of them a little bit more. So I'm going to take this one out. I'm going to shift this over like a 1/16 of an inch, and I'm going to trim again. We're creating a gap, and that gap is going to allow our easel to tuck in and hold. So if you look at this one, the finished one, you can see that we need to add some leaves. That's the way they go together. So the leaf is actually coming down like this, but then I take this extra leaf. Oh, you don't see it, hang on. I take this extra leaf and I turn it in a different direction. So let's add this one with adhesive on all the parts, and it's coming down like so. We trim it off, and then we're going to trim this leaf off, but we're not going to do that until we've actually added it here. So let's put our adhesive on the back side again. Bring those two together so you can see where that leaf is supposed to line up with the rest. Add it, pull this away and trim. And now we have our branch that has fallen onto the floor, onto the ground. Okay, and we have a slight gap in there, and that gap we are now going, oh wait, we want to stamp our the rest of our sentiment. So we're going to take that stamp that I've cleaned off already, and we're going to mask it again with our tape. So we're putting a strip of tape across everything above U, at least some of it, so that when we ink this up, we're protecting everything from getting inked except the U. So I've inked that up. Now I'm going to exhale, and I'm going to stamp that off to the left a bit on this bottom layer. Take my pen again and add 3 dots right before it, since we're continuing on from another page. And then this is going to get added to the inside of our card with a little bit of a lift right here. And oops, I don't have my dimensional under there. Oh, I remember. I was taking it off of there because what happened is I put the dimensional on this one too far back, and this one was too far forward. You want to put them on there equally so that when you have your card standing up as an easel, this is going to sit inside the easel equally. It's because there's a little bit of a tilt. You can see it goes into that gap there. So let's make sure we do the same thing here. And you do want to allow a little bit of room, so you don't want to go right up to the top, but we're going to put 3 along here so that they're about 1/8 of an inch away from the top, with the flat edge of the dimensional parallel to the flat edge of the top. Okay, and then on the bottom, we'll add our seal adhesive, and just along the bottom, and on this piece we'll add it on the top and bottom. You can actually add it in the middle too if you'd like. Let's take off the release paper, the backings of the dimensionals. We're going to add this into the inside of our card so that we see about the same distance all the way around. This one will get added to the top so that we see about the same distance from that top score line all the way around. And then of course you'll see that gap in there, and that catches our card. There we go. So cool, right? So fun. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. When creating this card, I did use 2 colors that I told you are going to be leaving us, Parakeet Party and Sweet Sorbet. We also have 3 other colors that are guaranteed to leave because they only are around for 2 years. This is our In Color family. We get a new In Color family every year, and then they stick around for 2 years. So this is on its 2-year cycle already. It's towards the end. These are the colors that will be leaving us. We have Orchid Oasis, Tahitian Tide, Starry Sky. Of course, you can get those colors in all kinds of things, not only ink pads and cardstocks and markers and blends and all that kind of thing, but there's lots of designer papers that have these colors, embellishments, ribbons. So make sure that you stock up before they disappear. And that means that these publications are going to be leaving us soon because we'll have a new annual catalog. The mini catalog and this annual end in April, the end of April. And then the new annual catalog, the mini will wait for a while, but the new annual catalog will begin in May with the new In Colors, right? So we are currently on our convention trip in Houston, and we're getting to see all the new stuff. It's so much fun. So when I return, I will have news about the new In Colors and other things, but make sure that you stock up on products that you love that contain those colors, okay? I hope that you enjoyed what I shared today. Remember to refer to the description of my video for a list of supplies that I've used on these cards. Also be sure to click on the links to my blog posts so that you can see close-up photos of what I've created, see the measurements written out, and see and shop from a visual supply list. Please join me next week when I'll be live at 11 a.m. Central Time for my next paper crafting class featuring the new Flowering Zinnias designer paper. You're going to love it. Thanks for subscribing to my channel. Thanks for the thumbs up, and thanks for sharing. In the meantime, have a great week, and now I'd like you all to go and stamp your art out. Bye-bye.